I'm Glenn Skelton, Wetlands Officer at Surrey Wildlife Trust, and we're here today on the Pipp Brook near Dorking, one of the River Mole's major tributaries, and we've come to revisit some of the work that our volunteers have been carrying out to restore this stretch of river over the past 3 years. Okay, so we've got a poor bit of channel here, and you can see the channel's very over wide. There's a lot of erosion from the livestock. You can see not a huge amount of vegetation growing up along the edges of the channel or actually within the water itself. Very silty bed as well. We look downstream where we've carried out part of the restoration project, a much narrower channel. This is able to keep the silt moving downstream. We've got these lovely bars of vegetation. They'll all be creating refuges for wildlife, lots of different areas for fish to go in and out. And of course we've got some of the overhanging vegetation there, dropping terrestrial food into the water as well.
So this is one of the key problems in the rivers. It's this silt. And as the silt comes downstream, it sits on these stones, the gravels in the river, and it's these which are what I described as the engine room. This is where all the mayflies, the caddisflies live. They provide food for the fish. But these gravels also create habitat for fish to be able to spawn. This is where they lay their eggs. So when we have all of this silt sitting on there, it smothers out those habitats, and as a result, we lose biodiversity.
So one of the common issues we have with our river corridors is that over time the trees grow up either side of the river, they begin to shade it out. What happens then is no plants can grow underneath the trees, and as a result you don't have an awful lot going on. Algae can't grow, bankside plants can't grow, and of course aquatic plants can't grow. Of course, back in the day, beavers would have done this job for us. They would have been going along, gnawing bits here and there and creating almost a dappled shade type effect. But of course, we've had to do this ourselves. So just around us here, we can see some of the stalls that we coppiced 2 years ago. They've already started growing back quite well. And as a result of that, we've had this explosion of watercress here, absolutely filling the corridor all the way down here. So the plants underneath that, from what was a very sort of bare channel, has suddenly become this lush corridor. So another issue we find across our rivers is the march of invasive species, and I've got one of those here. This is Himalayan balsam. It was introduced to Britain in the 19th century by Victorian plant hunters, and since then it's been rampaging across our rivers. Now, balsam is extremely successful in this country. It grows in very dense stands and it's able to shade out all of the plants that are underneath it. It can be identified by these pink flowers between sort of June and September, and if you break the stem in half, you can see you've got a hollow stem in the middle here and very shallow rooted. So one of the bonuses is it's incredibly easy to pull out, and our volunteers have been working for years going across the river and actually just lifting it out and clearing it and allowing the aquatic and marginal plants alongside the river to grow back. Himalayan balsam is here to stay, but when managed on a community level, we can actually get on top of it. Okay, so we're a bit further downstream here, and this is why I do my job. We've had a team of river search volunteers working on this stretch over the past 3 years, and you can see just how the river has recovered from what it was previously. I mean, this channel used to be hugely over wide, and so we've taken these brushwood sticks here and we've basically created these low shelved banks around here. It doesn't take nature long to recolonise. As a result, we've got all of this marginal vegetation growing up, huge amounts of reeds, we've got some of the gypsy wort here as well. And again, as we've narrowed that stream down, you can see the speed of the flow. It's helping to keep silt off the bed. As a result, we've got some of those great gravel habitats where all of those mayflies are living, where those fish can actually lay their eggs. So this is what it's all about. When we have these faster flows, you can see, look at the gravels, a lot cleaner, the silt has been washed away, and this is where all of those invertebrates are going to be living. But at the same time, we've also got the aquatic plants that are able to take hold. They're not smothered out by the silt. And many of those invertebrates will be living in this, they'll be feeding off it, feeding on any algae that grows on it as well. So as I mentioned previously, it really is the engine room of the river. And so a couple of years after we'd carried out this project, it's great to see how the low-lying shells have actually recolonised. We've created the opportunities for the plants to come back, and sure enough they have. Down here we can see we've got a water forget-me-not. Very common species of gardens is the common forget-me-not.
But you can see that growing in these mats along here. Other nice species, great for pollinators, the water mint as well. Beautiful smelling, it makes a beautiful aroma across the river. And this is nice to see as well, not so commonly seen, is the water plantain. And so it's really great for us to be able to see this species has come back. When we restore the channels, this is what we see as well. You get this great structure within the stream. We've got where we had the brushwood bundles there. You can imagine all the little roots under there. The fish will be using that as refuge area. They can get out of the way of the main flows under there, escape from predators. And of course, all of this, it's fantastic habitat for invertebrates. And oh my word, look at the size of that. Rivers across this country are cleaner than they've been for centuries. However, there's still a lot of work to do. As climate change begins to bite, we're seeing more prolonged dry spells and areas of the river drying up that never used to. And of course, we're seeing increased flood events from these storms that we're seeing. Other problems include pollution, barriers to fish passage and invasive species across the catchment. So we're working with lots of different organisations, local landowners and volunteers to actually create a more resilient catchment that not only can protect our towns from flooding but can also help to boost that nature superhighway.